Okay, well, as Faye mentioned, my name is Chris Forsythe. I did start a nonprofit a couple years ago called Bluebirds of Central Kentucky. Bluebirding has been a a long a long held passion of mine, and there was an opportunity in Franklin County to start a bluebird trail, actually two, at some public areas, and the habitat is perfect. Kentucky, as we'll get into, has a lot of great bluebird habitat, and for reasons we'll soon understand, the habitat, a lot of the habitat is disappearing. So we need to try and help out, and this is what we'll talk to in this presentation. So to review the agenda, we'll talk about bluebirds a little bit, what the benefits are, how to monitor, because that's an important element of the trail, and then how you can get started. All right, everyone, most people here probably, I'm speaking with folks who are familiar with the outdoors, with their plants, with their trees, and you know how important the integration between our native species of plants and our native songbirds are. The adult male is just, I mean, look at that handsome guy, right? That dark, that blue, that persimmon chest. And as you know, as in nature, most birds, the females are a little less bright and brilliant. But these are great parents. When they decide to start a family in the spring or in the winter, they stay together through the nesting season. And they are very doting, loving parents. They will raise 3, sometimes 4, depending on where you live, 3 broods of babies over our nesting season. So we will start seeing nests in March and April, eggs usually around late April, May, and they'll continue into August. We did our last bluebird monitoring check on August 21st this year. So it's a good season. We you can see 4 or 5 eggs per nesting attempt. So if you do the math, there's an opportunity to add quite a few birds to the local bluebird population just in one season. Now this is not the bluebird. I have to say this because in my conversations, I do occasionally hear people say, "Oh yeah, you know, those are, I get them in my feeder all the time," and they're kind of bullies to the other birds. And that is a paraphrase quote from my kids. This is not the eastern bluebird. This is, in fact, everyone knows, the blue jay. All right, so why are we so concerned with habitat restoration or habitat conservation for the eastern bluebirds? Well, they're under pressure. Nature is very tough. It's tough to be a bird. There are many risk factors that we try, as bluebird landlords, we try to mitigate. We try to reduce the risk to help increase the success rate of a nest, of eggs, of hatching, and of fledging those chicks. Predation, like I said, raccoons and snakes, they have to eat, and they like eggs. So we will lose. The black rat snake is just, if you've ever seen one in your home or in in your garden, they will climb like a vertical wall, and they are just amazing climbers. And no matter the protection that we use on our nesting boxes, snakes will get some. Raccoons, we have baffles, predator baffles, which discourage climbing and raiding the nests. Domesticated or outdoor cats, that is a touchy subject. People feel like their cats are happier if they're outside. That may be true. I've never asked a cat, but they are very destructive predators. And frankly, non-native, right? So they don't, there's not really the development or evolution of predator-prey relationships when it comes to cats. So it's unbalanced. But the cats can jump, and the predator baffles will not stop cats from jumping up on a box. Habitat loss. I don't know if anyone on this call, I wasn't around, but in the 50s and 60s and 70s, there was a big social cultural push about this recognition of the loss of the bluebird. They used to be as prevalent as like the common robin. You would find them in urban and suburban and rural. You could find them across all the human environments. They really took a hit in the 1800s when we introduced the European house sparrow. These birds were brought in, we believe, for agricultural purposes, to eat bugs that eat crops. And just like the little old lady who swallowed the fly, right? It just became a big problem for our native songbirds. Sparrows are really aggressive, and it seems like I don't know that they have personalities, but they tend to be very, territorial. They will go in and take a box and hurt the parents of the occupants of that box just because, and they won't build the nest. They'll just dispatch. So house sparrows are a real problem. On our trails, we do not allow any house sparrows to take up residency because you will lose the trail quickly. Bluebirds and other cavity nesters like them, and that includes tree swallows and tufted titmouse and the Carolina chickadee, the house wren, Carolina wren. These are primary cavity nesters. That means they don't have another option. They only nest in cavities, meaning in nature, a dead tree, a snag with woodpecker holes in them, is a cavity, and so they'll nest in those holes. I'm not I'm not proposing that everyone leave dead trees all around their property. That no one really likes that, but snags are really good habitat for food for woodpeckers, homes for bluebirds. So if you have the luxury of space and land, leave your snags up. It proves beneficial. When fence lines, rural fence lines used to be, wood. Many still are, but the holes in those fence posts also created a lot of great habitat for bluebirds. But we tend to do a good job keeping our fences fresh and clean here in the bluegrass. A couple years ago, researchers at the University of Kentucky did a longitudinal study on bluebird population, and we're showing that this is not the greatest graphic, I admit, but the black blob looking thing over the Ohio River Valley is a statistical loss in population of the eastern bluebird. This is, it make no mistake, they're still very stable as a population, but this part of the country is prime habitat, and they're abundant in Kentucky and Ohio and Tennessee, the Carolinas. What's not clear, and speaking to the president of the North American Bluebird Society over the weekend, what's not clear is all the whys, right? We don't, scientists don't have all the answers. They may tell you differently, but they don't have all the answers, and that's why they keep asking questions and doing the research. What we do at Bluebirds of Central Kentucky is we believe that we can help. We can provide those boxes, keep them safe and secure, and make sure we have channels to educate, like this one. And the more stable, I mean, as we offer our habitat, our modest boxes, maybe we can reverse this trend. I would like to see that, but as it stands, and this is, I think this study is probably about, it's a few years old now. I don't know that a follow-up has been done, but North American Bluebird Society is very interested in working with someone to do that. We'll keep you posted. So here's some benefits that I found of running a trail, and I've been running a trail, 2 trails out in Franklin County for a couple of years now, since 2018. And I started in college. That was a few more years ago, in Central Alabama. And what I did expect, to record the data. I did expect to see evidence of predation and competition and infestation. And I expected to help mitigate all of those different risks. What I did not expect is all of the great friendships and relationships and the stories, and that is a benefit of bluebirding that I don't know that everybody talks about, but they should. It's a social event. Once a week, we go for a walk around the Bluebird Trail. We record notes, and we clean out boxes when it's time, or we add tanglefoot to the pole to keep the ants from, running up into the box. We can talk more about that, but we share stories. We share stories. How was your week? What's going on? And it's a great way to get to know people. Bluebirds are really nice and very tolerant of human help. They take to our boxes without any trouble. The old wives' tale we've heard, don't touch a nest, the birds won't return. That's just that. Most birds can't smell. They have no idea you touched their nest. Vultures can, one of the few birds, but bluebirds cannot. They cannot smell. So when we go and monitor and check nests, we know that the parent, if we make any changes to the box, we'll always monitor to make sure that the parent can return. And they 9.5 times out of 10, they do. Bluebirds are great bug eaters, right? They will forage on the ground. So their preferred habitat is sort of a mowed pasture, like the one you see here in this photo. They don't want to be in the trees. The woodland species tend to outcompete bluebirds for box space, like the house wren. So we move the boxes out into more of an open area. The one, I don't know you can see, but I'm standing next to one, and not a great shot of the back of my head, but next to that, next to my extended arm there is a bluebird box from Wild Birds Unlimited, who helps out a lot along these trails and helps me provide me space for presentations to their stores. Great resource for information if you want to connect with your local Wild Birds Unlimited retailer. Research, community science, or citizen science. Community science, I think, is the more preferred term these days, but we enter our nesting statistics and data into NestWatch. Cornell Lab of Ornithology has an incredible database of birds and nesting activity. And it's largely what researchers globally will use to point to birds as a bellwether or a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, for climate change. And when you can control certain variables in nesting, you can start to mitigate risks more easily, right? So if you have a control, like a box is the same size, opening is the same size, you have a baffle, it's hung, it's 5 feet off the ground. You can do things that are repeatable and see if they work. So this is a lot of this is experimental design and the scientific method. You just, well, I wonder if I build this wren guard and cover the hole, if wrens won't go in and evict the bluebirds or chickadees that are living there. Oh, it worked. We have a reduction in the competition loss of our eggs and chicks. Well, that's great. Let's try it on our other trails, right? So it gives us a lot of opportunity to experiment and test our theories, which is a lot of fun. All right, so how do you get started, right? So you get a plan, you got to find the habitat. If you have acreage, and you're lucky to have acreage, that's great. If you have a backyard, a 1/4 acre backyard, you can do it there too. The more urban, suburban you are, the more house sparrows will be a concern, or outside cats, right? Bluebirds, we've really sort of accepted the fact that bluebirds are now just a rural species. The battle with our starlings and house sparrows is just, it's hard to get folks interested in bluebirding if you tell them, hey, you're gonna have to spend most of your time trapping and dispatching house sparrows and starlings. And they're like, no, I'm not interested in that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. It's terrible and no one wants to do it. But you won't have a successful bluebird trail with native species unless those other things are controlled for. The procurement of materials, you don't have to buy your boxes. You can build them. In fact, the trail that I showed a photo of earlier has 26 boxes on it. It's not a huge trail, but it's not small either. Those boxes were designed by a professor at the University of Kentucky, Wayne Davis, who literally wrote the book on bluebirding. He's since passed, and unfortunately, I never got a chance to meet him. But I reference his work on all my presentations. I give him credit for the design. It's called the Kentucky slot box. So it is not a hole opening. It is a slot opening, and there is some evidence that house sparrows do not prefer that design. They would choose, when on the same trail, they would choose the round opening to the box instead of the slot box. And I've seen that. I've seen that at West Six Farm out in Franklin County, Peaks Mill. We've had a couple house sparrows, and they've only used the 2 boxes that we have with circular or round openings. Now that's anecdotal. That's not scientifically, statistically shown, but in my experience, that is the case. And when you install boxes, if you choose to do this, you can install them right now. Like, you don't have to wait. They will begin looking for boxes in February. But what you can do is you can provide boxes through the winter for our year-rounders. We do have year-round bluebirds here. We will get some migrants from Canada and Michigan up north, and they will come down and they will seek warmer, places to stay. You can find 5 or 6 bluebirds kind of huddled up inside of the box in the coldest of the winters. We like to insulate the box a little bit, stuff the vents, put some wood chips or shavings on the bottom to keep an insulating layer, keep it a little bit warmer in there for them. The weekly monitoring is kind of that's the big ask, right? That's the tough part. We all have other things to do, but weekly monitoring, I know some people that go longer. I know some people who check like every other day, but a week gives you enough time to watch the developmental milestones of these birds. It's easier to check in on them and make sure they're doing well. And if they're not, it gives you time to correct for those things. And then your trail, if you choose a trail, 1 box is great. A trail is 10 or more. If you're able to start a trail, that is fantastic. If you can't, do what you can. It's always my thing. Just, you don't have to have a perfect setup to begin with. Just continue to learn. Boxes should be spaced a little bit. The bluebirds are territorial, and they will battle it out for competing male bluebirds for nesting space. Remove them from wooded, brushy areas. I mentioned that earlier. The woodland species tend to be a little more aggressive. The box should be, about easy for you to monitor, right? So I'm a little tall, over 6 foot, and when I installed the trail, it quickly became apparent that when I would have middle school birding clubs come and do the trail with me, I was like, oh, these are all spaced for my height, not for theirs. So bought a little step stool we carried around with us when we'd go do the trail. The box, the whole of the box, and this is just for, keeping the wind-driven rain out. I'd like to point it like leeward of the prevailing weather. Most of our weather comes in from the west, northwest. Sometimes it comes in different directions, but most of the time, we get our storms coming in from west to east. Pesticide use, gone are the days of DDT, thank goodness, but some of these chemicals tend to, this is such a small little tiny bird that eats insects off the ground. If we spray, those chemicals do make it into the nest box. Not here to present evidence of anything. I think to mention, we've had some golf course trails, and the success has been mixed. When I go and present to parks or landowners, and their concern is mowing around them, or grazing cattle, cattle love to rub, and they will just flatten the box, knock the box straight off the pole. So there's different things to consider, and there's different methods to keep the boxes out of the way, but yet accessible. In Texas, there's a trail that's elevated so that people can check on horseback. Now, we living in horse country, I think we could probably make that happen, but it's just interesting what creative people will do on their bluebird trails. Materials. Oh, and this is my favorite black rat snake photo. I mean, very good climbers, right? They just can get up anything. This is an example of a predator baffle, typical, standard bluebird box. The longer, that baffle probably could be longer, right? You probably go with a 5-foot baffle instead of that. Looks like about a 2-foot baffle. You want it to wobble so that when a predator tries to get up, it's unstable, and they don't care for that very much. We carry around our tools, our monitoring tools, in 5-gallon buckets. Just what's convenient, what's easy. The conduit, you can go to any Home Depot or Lowe's or home hardware store. They come standard in 10-foot sections. We cut them down to 8-foot. We bury them about 18 to 24 inches into the ground. Now, if you're in Central Kentucky, limestone is a real issue. It's right there at the surface. So we use a soil probe to find the best, spot for these poles to install. We use ivory soap on the roof of the box, and it keeps the paper wasps from attaching their nests inside. It's always a little surprising when you open and there's a wasp nest waiting for you right at your face. A mechanic's mirror, if that doesn't make sense to you, it's just a telescoping tool it's like a dental mirror. It's got a little round, and it lets you kind of peek in and count eggs and babies without having to disturb it. It's been very helpful for my middle school birding clubs. I mentioned the wren guard earlier. We just created a wren guard, just hinged 2 pieces of wood, block the opening of the slot box. The wren, who uses sticks to build its nest, tend to have trouble getting in past this, right? And if they don't see the opening, they might not realize there's a cavity there. So they tend to discourage the wrens from going in. And their house wrens are native, and they will very aggressively remove eggs or baby birds from a nest box that they want to use. I mentioned tanglefoot. Tanglefoot is an organic, very old way to keep ants off of trees or posts. It is really bad for bird feathers. Do not use it anywhere near the box. We put it up inside the baffle, right? So birds won't fly up in there. We put it up inside, just inside the baffle on the pole, and ants won't be able to get in. They'll get stuck. So they won't build ant nests inside your nesting box. This is just a funny little example. We, as a bluebird landlord, you want to provide a safe and dry habitat. In this photo, you can see that the door has been pecked on or chewed on by a squirrel or pecked on by a bird. In the corner, there's a white organic cotton insulation. So this has been winterized, and you can tell by the lack of leaves on the trees, this is really early spring. So we're getting ready to de-winterize and prepare the trail for our spring nesting season. We create every I'd like to do it more often, but we try to have a winterization or a spring nesting event where volunteers will gather, and we'll go around and clean out boxes and get ready, and then turn those folks into helpers during the monitoring season. The question is often asked, well, can't these birds just find their own holes? Like, why do we need to put up boxes and monitor them? Yeah, they sure can, and they do. But you can't control for all of those risks as easily if the nest is built 20 foot off the ground in a snag, right? You can't get there, not safely. This provides us the opportunity to be more proactive and helpful as the bluebirds raise their family. Nest cams are there's a lot of movement toward nest cams. This is a bit older. I don't think nest cams look like that much anymore, but you could remotely monitor, and a lot of people do. You can find these videos on YouTube or elsewhere, wherever you get your content. We physically monitor our boxes once a week. So it's a great excuse to get outside, go for a walk, interact with nature, count some eggs and babies, and then, again, help reduce risk. Education is a huge part of this. This is, I don't know that a lot of people know. I think people that want to know about bluebirds and their challenges. But we make a special point of reaching out to. A couple weeks ago, we had 42 kindergarten kids, and we did a nest habitat and diet presentation. And 42 kindergarten kids I hadn't worked with that age in a while, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, kids are, just, they can't sit still. It was their first field trip ever, and they came out to the farm in Franklin County, and it was just hysterical to watch. It was so much fun. We make it fun. We bird bingo, so we have different types of cavity nesters, and if you can collect all the nests in one trip, right, different kinds, then you get a bingo. It's really fun and it's been fun for me. I have two kids, two boys, and it's all kind of began as a way to spend time with them, and it's been amazing. I didn't expect to turn my two boys into bird nerds, but they sure took to it easily, and we'll be driving, somewhere, and be like, "Dad, red-tailed hawk." I'm like, yes, red-tailed hawk. Dad, kestrel. It's just, there's so much fun once you start paying attention to the birds and the biodiversity, it's impossible not to see it. you want to learn more.